welcome everyone. We want to quickly, because we've already done this a number of times and most of us are used to this process at this point, I'm going to go over it quickly, but if anyone has questions, please make sure that they get asked. So if you have a question or would like to get our attention, cover up your screen or your camera, and that will get our attention. We'll call your name and you can ask whatever question you have. If you would like to see a demonstration again, go ahead and show us this sign. If you would like us to watch your next attempt or so, point to your eye, but be close to the camera, or else if you're doing it there, it just looks like maybe you're scratching your eye, so get really close to the camera and do it. And then beyond that, largely what we're gonna be asking are questions to make sure that we're all paying attention, that the audio and video are still working. And so we'll say, do you X, Y, Z? And you're just gonna give us a thumbs up. The thumbs up will be just kind of the general cue of like, yep, everything is still functioning in this world of technology. Right, everyone? Excellent, 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 excellent. Tonight, we're gonna play with a hodgepodge of a bunch of things. We're gonna look at some techniques that are gonna feed a bunch of different parts of our practice, and we're gonna work through a number of different exercises to get there. Most of you already know, but let me introduce Emily. And then for those of you that don't know me, my name is Lux, and we're gonna be guiding the next couple of hours of acrobatic practice. Do make sure that we are not going to overstress ourselves or our partners by demanding too much in this very limited time frame that we're working in, and also in this constraint of most of us, aside from a few really beautifully fortunate humans, are working without spotters. And so if you are working without spotters, let's not push ourselves to any places of injury. Be conservative about the attempts that you make and keep it on the safe side. Refine techniques that we already know. We're just gonna look maybe a little bit at a layer deeper of them, and not try to blow out any of our muscles or joints in an effort to just get through something. Fair, everyone? Superb. I know, thumbs up dances. People are looking good today. I guess everyone got a little dose of sunshine today, right?
Yes. Did you get a haircut?
I did. I got a haircut last week. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. My teaching partner on Wednesdays, Sam, also like brings the full bib and clippers and scissors and like actually cut hair. So, yeah. Welcome, new folk. And so what we're going to start off with is a little bit of movement that Emily is going to lead us through, and then that's going to take us into our partner acrobatics. So, sorry, Disaster, who just joined.
Hello.
Can you put your names down so that we can address you by names?
Yeah.
On your screen? Thank you. So Emily's going to start off by leading us through some individual exercises before our partner exercises. So we'll give Emily our attention and get moving.
Yep. All right, everyone. So let's just get started by standing up, creating the space between yourself and the other person next to you so you don't bonk into each other. And to get our heart rate up, let's just run in place. So starting to draw those knees up more in toward your chest. If you're holding a baby, totally understand. You might be doing this more slowly. Good. See how high those knees can go. And then draw those heels back toward your glutes. Good. And we're going to jump in and out now. So you're going to jump together, and then jump apart, and then back and forth. Whee! Love how Lex always does this part off camera. And one more. Good. Step those feet in a little bit closer. We're going to draw all the way down into that low spot. Reach those hands up forward. And then extend and reach the arms overhead. And then we're going to go back and forth.
I'm only half. I just want to be at half in so they see I'm
You see Lux's arm. Looking good, everyone. Just 2 more. Nice. This next time that you reach on up, keep those legs nice and wide. We're gonna twist right to left. The arms can just be chill. Relax it. Each rotation. Okay. All right. So from here, we're gonna take one foot forward and step the other foot on back. And just like into a lunge, you can bring your hands onto your hips here. Good. And we're gonna warm up our shoulders at the same time, which is a good way to kind of practice balance. So reach your arms up overhead, and then one arm is gonna come forward, the other arm is gonna come back. So even though our arms are moving, our lower body is engaged, squeezing those legs together. From here, see if you can slowly lower that back knee all the way down onto the ground. Relax your toes. Then reach your hands on down, extend your front leg. Press our internal and external rotation so the toes will drop in, and then the toes will come out. And just really foot around right to left. Foot dance.
1 foot dance.
1 foot dance.
Spins the greatest of circles.
Beautiful. Okay, let's switch on over to the other side, starting with the knee lifted. If you can't remember which arm came forward first, no worries. Just do something with your arms. Swim.
It is. It's great.
Okay. Bend that knee a whole bunch until it slowly lowers on down. Then relax those toes. Extend your front leg. And back and forth, right to left. So good to see all of you moving.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite moments because when we start to move into the flow, everyone's at like a different pace of it, but here everyone's doing the same thing at the same time.
Yeah. All right, one last thing. Shift to both hands and knees and bring the wrists in line with your shoulders and just kind of draw some circles right to left. Swirly. And then reverse directions. Right. Bring those hands together and do little waves. Everyone feeling a little bit more in your own body? Thumbs up.
Getting there? Getting there? I don't know. They're into the wave enough, but I'm not even saying thumbs up.
Like, big wave if you're really feeling. Okay, there we go. As always, love it, Chris. Beautiful. As always, take care of your own body. If you have other needs here, take a moment to do that. But at this point, we will start to shift into some partner-based warm up. So,
I am about there, but my kid is not the greatest at cooking. I don't want to burn the house down.
Flex is attending to Domesticalia.
I told that kid that I was not going to be a parent for the next couple of hours, and he just left food in the stove, in the oven, and like, you know, you still got to make sure that the house doesn't burn down. Is anyone interested in a healthy teenage kid? I'll make you a real good deal. Just anyone? No takers. I understand.
Do you know how to mop?
Truck wants to adopt.
Actually, I was just teaching him to scrub toilets today, so, you know, yeah, he's got some technique. All right, on to less important things. What we're going to start with today is this is the same way that we've been starting class each week. This is looking at walking the plank, making some rotations from there, and then we'll go into our star position. We're going to touch the shin on one side, and we're going to touch the foot on the other. And so what that looks like is this. We're starting off in our front plank position where you have a reverse hand-to-hand grip, and the arm line is going to be solid all the way from the base of shoulders to the flyer shoulders. Flyer lifts weight off of one foot, and I'm going to then take that free foot and walk down all the way to the ankles. When we hit the ankles, we're going to go wide. As we go wide, flyer comes into a tuck and then extends back out. And as a base, I'm following the flyer here. I'm not trying to lead this, I'm following. And after that, we're going to then walk back to plank. And then we'll come around to star. Flyer will give a shin. Base will make a connection with that shin by bending the knee that's on the shoulder and then extending the foot that's on the shoulder so that the flyer can bring the foot to the ground by the base's hip. And then we're going to reverse that, extending the leg on the shoulder as the flyer tucks into the inversion and then brings the leg back behind it. We're going to make a reverse foot-to-foot connection on the backside. And we'll go back and forth between that, and you can do that on both sides. Again, this should be reviewed for just about everyone here. If that's something that you would like a greater clarification on, if you would like more words in directions, we're happy to give that. We know just about everyone's practice here, so we know that that's in most people's wheelhouse. Again, if you want to see a demonstration again, or if you want us to watch you, those are the hand signals to let us know. And give it a shot. 3, 2, 1. The most universal is that as people are moving back into star, some flyers have their elbows straight and they're pushing the arms back behind them. And that is often deadens some of the movement that we've created or that we've started. And so that would be the first thing to really look at is that as the base is drawing all of this back in and the flyers, we're starting to bring our knees back into our chest. Let the elbows go with that and bring them more toward 90 degrees so that we can push down into the base's shoulders when that happens. And that way we're not pushing the base's arms back over their own head. And again, I'm going to do some of these, or we're going to do some of these things verbally and not do demonstrations for all of them. But if you need demonstrations for any of these things, please interrupt us and say, hey, actually, that thing that you just talked about, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So can you show us that? And we will every time. So just let us know if there's any of that that y'all need. Cool? Cool.
Can you show us that?
Yeah. Not yet. Cool. You know how to do that? You know how to fuck it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
So this part, people are doing well. Flyers are getting to this part here. But you see how the flyer's arms are straight here? And so there's some that are going back into the inversion like this. And we stall out in this moment. And if the flyer takes and bends the elbows, this changes where we get to put the forces and makes that inversion much easier. And so just having the flyers bring those elbows in, because we were just extended and the tension is already pushing in this way, and so it feels sometimes tenuous to want to take that tension out of the arms. But if we take the tension out of the arms, allow them to come back in, then we can find more appropriate tension to go into the inversion. Make sense? Excellent, excellent. We want tension between us. We just want it to be in places that are more efficient for the movements we're trying to do. What we're gonna look at next is one of the most basic transitions that we're always working in this practice. It's a corkscrew. We're gonna go from front plank to star back to front plank. And this is one of those ones that almost everyone can do and almost nobody does very well. Almost. Some people do it very well, but almost none. Most people just kind of slop their way through it. They effort and make the flyers do a lot of work that the flyers shouldn't have to do, and then the bases often get into strange compressed positions. And so we're going to look at probably about 15 different techniques that we're going to look to try to smooth this out. Now, we don't expect anyone to be able to do all 15 the first time you hear them. And so we're going to give a good amount of detail, and some people that have been hearing this for 6 months, 8 months, or a year are going to be able to start to pick up more and more of those pieces. So see which pieces are going to work best for you, and then we'll talk about some of the broadest techniques that we want to make sure that everyone at least has. We'll do this one head on. So from our front plank position, we're going to take a hand-to-hand grip. And when we take this hand-to-hand grip, what we have the ability to do is shift the weight a bit more into the shoulders or keep the weight into the feet based on how much bend is in the base's elbows. Or the flyer's elbows for that matter. If I were to keep my elbows straight, the flyer can do the same exercise by bending their elbows and bringing the shoulders lower and shifting the weight between the hands or the feet. And so what we want to do here is we want to push the shoulders high so that I can extend through my heel and rotate at the heel. And that's probably one of the first things. Most people rotate from the center of the foot, not as nice. Instead, we want to extend through the heel, rotate from the heel, and then I bend the knee the width of the flyer's hips, and then extend up from there. From there, we have the flyer shoulders that are way off the midline of the base, and we want to try to make that a bit easier. And so I'm going to take my leg that is balancing, and I'm going to rotate so that the shoulders are moving over my shoulders. So that as I bring a foot up toward that shoulder, it is over my center, not off my center. From there, things get more straightforward, where we're trying to bend the knee enough that we can get the torso stacked, and then we press up through that stacked torso to the second shoulder. From there, flyers rotate, and the base is going to follow that rotation, taking the front foot off, and I'm going to bring it right by the second foot and trace down the side of the flyer's body until I reach the hip. And then we take this front arm, and we're going to press it to release the foot off of the shoulder. This is a great method to make sure that I'm not going to take my foot and choke my flyer in the throat as I try to take that foot off. So making sure that we get a good extension, release that foot, and then I'm going to bring that foot to the waistline, and I bend the knee to reach the flyer's top hip, and then we take this underarm and push it through so that we get back to our front plank position. So a tremendous amount of detail for something that is relatively common. And in real time, it looks more like and we've been working this for independently of each other for a number of years, and there's still plenty of refinement for us to find in all of those nuances. And so we're at some stage of fluidity in it, and over the next number of years, it will only get smoother and smoother. A few refinements. Mostly what we have, and this is pretty common in acrobatics, and you're gonna find a lot of opportunities and something to really explore as you go through your practice this week, this month, this season, however long that lasts. And what we have is that, and you can actually just sit here for a moment, is that if we have pressure on the shoulders and we have hands connected, we have some redundancy here. And because I'm not going to stand on both of Emily's shoulders, we're going to show it this way. As soon as I have one foot on the shoulder, this hand becomes much less important, because now Emily has support on the right and the left side of the body. Really, this is the right side and this is the left side, but for argument's purposes, it worked just fine. That we want both sides supported. And so there's this moment in our transition where we have this hand-to-hand grip, and only one of these becomes important in this moment. In this moment, this hand is not doing anything for us, and we don't need it. And because it's not doing anything for us, often when we start to make transitions, it doesn't want to bend because there's no tension in it, and so it just extends sort of thoughtlessly. And so we want to soften that area. Because I'm getting connected to this shoulder here, I have the left side of the body supported, and because we have this arm connected here, we have the right side supported, and we don't need to do this. And mostly, and this is something bases I want us to all really focus strongly on, is that we tend to push through our wrist here and hyperextend our flyer's wrist. And that's one of the things that we see a lot is flyers come down with sore wrists from this. And so we are going to have this connection. We want to keep it soft, and we want to make sure that we're pushing into the base of the wrist, not through the knuckles of our partner. So as we start to go into the inversion, this doesn't have to have too much tension in it on this side. Even here, we don't really need that hand. We might feel that we do, but it's structurally not as important. Go ahead, come down. I want to switch the angle to show the backside. Coming down, there's a bit of instability, and the flyer's torso is sometimes trailing away from the base. And so bases, we have the ability to maintain connection to the flyer and help keep them knowledgeable of where they are in space through some tactile sensation. And so I want to, with my foot, start to trace the side of the body and know how far it is till we get to the hip, and then the flyer will start to meet to that same position because they know where on the hip they want that eventually to be. And so the rotation may become more intelligent. We go 1, 2, 3. And then on the way down here, I can take this foot right to the side of the ribs and trace down until I feel the bony structure of the hip and go a little bit past it for our front plank. And so a good way to just have the flyer know where they are in space and have the base start to develop a bit more intelligence with the foot and understand what it feels like when we're at the lat, what it feels like when we hit the ribs, what it feels like when the ribs are no longer there and we start to hit the obliques, and then what it feels like across the ridge of the hip down to our connection point where we're actually going to find stability. So again, a tremendous amount of nuance detail, and mostly everyone has this. All we're trying to do is see, can we peel a layer off of this and make it a little bit more intelligent and a little bit smoother? Make sense? Any questions on any of that? Jessica, yeah, got you. We'll show it again. For those of you that want to go ahead and play with it, but the parts to remember are that if we're connected to two sides of the body already and we have a third point of connection, one of those becomes redundant and we don't need to put so much tension into it. So start to loosen our reliance on it. Don't hyperextend our flyers' wrists or our bases, but usually it's the flyers. And if you can do just those couple of things, this will already get a lot smoother over time. Go ahead and give it a shot. And for those of you that want to watch it again, stick around. 3, 2, 1.
When you have two legs on her shoulders, after I see the rotation happens, is it something flyer initiates or you rotate her before chasing with the leg?
I really like the flyer to initiate that rotation. Flyers are thinking that they're lifting up and rotating, and the bases follow that.
And bases can also help with the hands moving in a direction to help guide you to know which way your body needs to rotate. That can be helpful.
So if you just go into a star and rotate the wrists, see if that helps give some intuition to how the hips rotate.
I still feel like I need to straddle, like do a pretty deep straddle to come down. I'm trying to keep the straddle closed, but I don't know, I feel like the straddle needs to be wider to get down to Tim's foot.
Rad. Keep it. Nothing wrong with that. The straddle is a just fine form. You don't get points taken away for a straddle. That doesn't change the form to poor form. Eventually, to do it without the straddle is something that you can play with. And Andrea, just as you were saying, you can just slowly start to bring that straddle a little bit closer together over time. But honestly, the only person that really cares about that is me. It's not really that important. Look at the difference between how we shift weight from one limb to another. And there's a technique that often we see is that if the flyer is balanced symmetrically on two sides, and it starts to shift to one, that the base kind of pulls the carpet out from under the flyer, which forces the flyer to fast twitch muscle move to where the support is. And instead, all we want to do is really look at an exercise in an effort to study a technique, which is that a flyer lifts off of the last support to the new support, and the base doesn't take it away from them. They wait until it's taken away from them, okay? So we've chosen to do this in a reverse throne. Right under the sits bones, and we're doing it this way so that we're not looking at each other trying to guess when it's going to happen. We're just going to try to feel it. And so Emily takes the bottom of her foot and she's bracing against my calf for some stability, but then just lifts away from my foot. And then I bring the foot right back under the sits bone, and Emily is going to try to not side bend too much and really think about lifting onto the new support instead of me taking the support away. Which way you go? Okay, I'm following you. Back in. Perch. And one thing that we do want everyone to practice as a part of this is an exit. And so we do want to make sure that everyone, because this does tend to have some lateral instability, and so sometimes when it does lift off, flyers or bases can get surprised that it's working, and then things start to happen a little bit erratically. And so we do want to have at least an exit strategy for how that goes down. And what we want to say before we show it is that there's a couple of things that we're looking at. One, which is staying underneath the center of the flyer, but I can't just look at the hips as a base. I need to also look at the shoulders of the flyer, because if the hips are going this way and the shoulders are going this way, I can't just follow the hips, or else I'm going to tumble underneath. So I really need to make sure that I am getting underneath the shoulders of the flyers. That's happening. And then I'm bending my knees, not so fast that we lose connection, but fast enough that I am getting the flyer to the ground upright with a little bit of haste. I want to make sure that it is not going to topple the flyer as it happens. If I don't bend quick enough and the flyer continues to tumble, that rotation is going to happen, and then their head can come toward the ground, and that's what we want to avoid. So before everyone goes to really play with this, we want everyone to at least just mess it up a little bit and go a little too far and bring it down. And you can see that Emily is super nimble. and is very quick to get on her feet, but we do want to make sure that as everyone is going through this, that flyers, you do have your stance such that you're ready to pounce on all fours if need be, and bases that you're staying underneath this and really getting them to the ground quickly. Does that make sense, everyone? All right, so a relatively straightforward exercise. I got you, pork chop. I do just want everyone to at least feel that nuanced difference between taking support away from a flyer, which will get to the same place and it generally still balances, or having a flyer lift away from support onto the new support. Pork chop, what you got?
Could we see this from Emily's side, like 180 degrees?
Absolutely. Cool. All right, give it a shot. 3, 2, 1.
I'm just finding it like a really big hamstring stretch, and I'm not sure how to make it not feel like that.
If it does feel like a bit of a hamstring stretch, a couple things that you can do is like I do, is you can put something under your hips, and that should take a little bit of tension off. And then if it still feels a little bit funky, you can do this with a bent knee and support your own knee with your hand, and then that'll take some tension off of the hamstring also, rather than having that hamstring all the way extended. From there, we're going to look at going through some fairly straightforward transitions, and we're going to see if we can do, let's go from inside star, star, inside star. So like from our brush position on the side. We are going to start with the foot in the armpit. We're going to use that foot in the armpit to take a hand-to-hand grip. As we take that hand-to-hand grip, we're going to press through the arms to move that foot from the armpit. In this moment, because I already have a foot on the hip, this arm is also not as important. The top arm is the one that can really push through, and we could release that. So again, this lesson of we really just need both sides of the body supported. The other one becomes redundant. But what we're going to do there is we're going to just lower the shoulder until the base can reach that shoulder with the straight leg, ideally. And we have this moment where we have both legs straight and that balanced. From there, we're going to bend the knee until that torso is stacked and press up and down the second side. And we want to find that moment again on the second side where both legs are extended and the shoulder and hip on the two sides are supported and the balance exists. And then to free that foot, get to the armpit and come down. And we want to be transparent that the foot in the armpit is a completely redundant move. It's not anything that's needed for this, but can we move from the top of the shoulder to the underside of the shoulder and not have the balance affected by that? Yeah, Danielle?
Can we see that from 90 so I can tell how far the feet are from parallel?
The base's feet?
Sure, I'll show it at 90. Does 90 work for you? Oh yeah, so armpit. Then we take our grip. Foot moves to shoulder. Balance established. Move to the inversion. Stepping down the second side. Balance established. Regrip. Get to the armpit. And dismount.
Okay.
Were they the parallel you thought? Excellent. Any other questions? All right, give us a shot, and please, in the middle of the round, you don't have to wait till the end of the round. If you have a question throughout the round, let us know. 3, 2, 1.
When I put my foot on her shoulder in that position, my leg straight, as I bend my knee, I end up pretty far out on the outside part of her shoulder. Is that normal?
It is normal, but it is not ideal. So
it's very hard to get in. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, so with the hand-to-hand grip on that side, if we just, as it's going in, and this is one of those things that there's really like a way that it will work in its ideal, and then the way that it works in its reality until that ideal comes in. And ideally what's happening is that as that knee is bending, we can push through the hand on that side, which just creates a little bit of space, and then it can shift. Now, in the meantime, until that feels like it can happen mid-transition, you're going to go about halfway or maybe 2/3 of the way down, and then it's going to start to slide out, and then you're going to push and replace it, and then continue with the transition into the inversion. And then so eventually you'll take the pause for the repositioning out, and it'll happen mid-rotation. But it's very common, and it happens all the time to me, and it's just something that you adjust for as you're transitioning. But we don't want to be on the joint itself. We definitely want to be up on the shoulder, ideally, unless Kendra's shoulders are just unique. So we have this really strange technique that that my partner and I developed a number of years ago, where we're going to make a transition from that side flying position into a throne. And the funky part of it is that we're used to basing with the bottom of our feet. But in this moment, the bottom of the foot is not quite accessible to where we want. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use the top of the foot as a way to bring the limb over. And as we go far enough bringing it over, it turns into the bottom of the foot. And so we're looking for this pulling with the foot that eventually, as it goes over, becomes the bottom. And some of us try to sickle the ankle a little bit soon and try to get to the bottom of the foot quickly. But if we don't worry about that, it will eventually get there. And so I don't want the bases to rush getting to the bottom of the foot. Now, flyers have a very strong ability to either make this work or to make this not work. Because as strong as I might think I am, my adduction that is trying to pull out is not nearly as strong as a typical flyer or even a non-typical flyer has the ability to pull it in. So if the flyer doesn't want to release the hip, the base is not going to be able to do it. So flyers, we do need to actually lead the base's foot as this is happening also. And we're going to look at that technique now. Keep my head on that. So we're going to be in our side flying position. And this time, rather than a hand-to-hand grip, which we had before, we're going to take a reverse hand-to-hand grip. In this reverse hand-to-hand grip, we can take the foot out of the armpit and then move to whatever rotation feels comfortable for you. But I'm going to take my foot as a base, bring it in front of my leg and behind my flyer's knee. And I'm just using the top of the foot there. And then as I bring that foot across, it becomes the bottom of the foot for the throne. Now, Emily is, sit for a moment. You can sit on my feet without the hands. And then I can Vanna White your leg.
Okay.
And so what we have in that moment is that as this knee started off all the way over there, it needs to really clear all the way across. And generally what I cue flyers to do here is to try to bring this knee to the top corner of the room that you're in over there. And so take a look at that. In front of my leg, behind the flyer's top of the foot, turns into the bottom as that knee moves toward the top corner of the room, and we find our way into a throw. Cool? So that technique we want everyone to play with. Learn how to take the top of the foot, turn it into a bottom of a foot. It's magic. Any questions? Cool. All right, give it a shot. Some of us that have been playing with this for a while, you can do this on both sides. You can do it in rapid fire. We're going to spend another probably 2 or 3 minutes on it, and then we'll look at the next piece. 3, 2, 1. What we want to look at now is going back where we came from, or really what we want to do is go to the other side, but the technique is the same. We're just now moving to a side start from the throne. And the bases get stuck here. There's really, like, all we can do as bases is present an opportunity, and then the flyer has to either choose to take it or not. And if they choose to take it, it doesn't mean it's going to work. It just means that it can't work unless they choose to take it.
Philosophy.
So from throne? So from throne, the first thing that we do as flyers is bring our knees together. And here's probably the most confusing thing, is that while the knees are going together, they start to point in one direction, but then they have to move in the opposite direction. And that's where most people get tripped up.
Right, so flyers, as you start to bring your legs together, really squeeze your inner thighs, and I can start to feel the knife edge of Lux's foot here. That's the foot I'm gonna move toward, but in order to get there, I'm gonna have to energetically move my legs in this direction and not back in this direction. So kind of shooting my legs out.
Yeah. And honestly, while that may have looked like it was this like big explosive movement, it's actually what makes it easier. If this is a slow movement, it's very common that we see the base's foot kind of slide up into the flyer's ribs and like grind that muffin top real good. And so if the flyers go for it, once they understand that the foot is in a good position, this works out much better. What we're doing as a base is we're using the blade edge of the foot, and I'm just presenting it right where it would go into that side start position. So, you know, we're finding wherever in the flyers, you're going to be able to direct your base a little bit higher, a little bit lower. You know where your side start position is better than everyone else. So you direct your base if it feels a little bit off. And then once you're like, all right, that's there, or it's about to be there, you go for it. Now as a base, the only nuance that we're looking at is to make sure that there's a little bit of buoyancy in the receiving leg, to make sure that I'm not rigid and extending out to the detriment of the fluidity of the movement. Because again, if that happens, it's very likely to start to chafe up the torso of the flyer and go toward the ribs, where I have not met flyers that want to balance there yet. One more time, we'll show it. Bases, really take a look at how I position my foot on the hip, and then flyers really look again at how the knees start to go in one direction, and then they do have to go in the other direction, and again, the more, not the more explosive, but like with relative swiftness, get there.
Relative swiftness.
Because it's sort of explosive, but if I say that, some people are going to prove me wrong by going too explosive.
Mini explosions.
Mini explosions. It's like an M40. So I go, let's go backwards just for a moment. So I go blade edge, and I just present there. My foot is soft and neutral as the flyer goes, and I just bend the knee a little bit to stay underneath so that I'm not feeling like it's tipping by overextending. And the amount that the base will bend that leg will vary depending on our proportions. So we look at the combined length of the flyer's arm and the base's arm as one metric, and then we look at the base's leg as another one, and then how much the flyer is rolling forward. And so there's not, like, I can't say that you have to bend a certain number of degrees, but we just want to maintain some equilibrium so that it doesn't feel like it's uncomfortable, and really let that be the measure that you have. Flyer, does this feel comfortable? Yes, then you're bending the right amount. Not yet, then make some adjustments. Does that make sense, everyone?
Can we
Super.
get that to 90?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll show this at 90. And then for those of you that want, go ahead, go play with it. And we'll come back in a few minutes and look at the next piece in 3, 2, 1. Let's see about this way. Here.
Will you do it from Bosch after this one?
Yeah. Is that good, Rochelle?
Thank you.
Awesome. From Bosch.
From here.
We're going to go through it one more time, and this time we're going to put all the pieces together, and we're going to give 2 options for how to do it. But what we're going to do is we're going to go from the side start position to star, to the second side start position, to the throne, and then to the side start position again. So it's kind of a washing machine that goes in this. In fact, you know, before it was called a washing machine, you know what we used to call it? We used to call it the front loader. Because washing machines now, this was a long time ago. I don't know if any of you are old enough to know that washing machines, you used to have to load them from the top. And then these fancy new ones you load from the front. And so the old washing machines spun this way, and then the new ones are going this way. This one is a front load washing machine. All right, that was like so not funny to anyone, but I had a ball with it. And Chris and Delaney, I appreciate y'all. I at least am getting a laugh out of there. The cat got it. All right. And I see other people are explaining to the young people what the old washing machines were. They didn't get it. I understand. All right, cool. I took the joke far enough that more people are laughing. We can move on. So the 2 things that we're going to look at are doing it with redundancy and with taking some of that redundancy out. So we start off at the armpit. We're going to take a hand-to-hand grip. We're going to move to the shoulder, down to the other side. As the foot comes to the armpit, we use that as an opportunity to switch the grip to the reverse hand-to-hand grip. We move to throne. As the foot comes to the armpit, we switch again to the hand-to-hand grip. Now, for those of us that feel comfortable with the hand-to-hand grip and want a little bit of funkiness to this, we can do the whole thing in a hand-to-hand grip also. And so we can go through. And the thing that we'll eliminate is the armpit because we don't need the grip switch anymore. So we go directly to the throne from there. And then we're going to go directly out of the throne. Sorry, we do regrip in throne. And then the one unique thing about this is we do want to make sure that the arms of the flyer start to move to the outside. And now I'm starting to feel like we need a little bit more discussion about this particular move. So there's a couple of pieces of nuance that we really want to focus on here. Number 1 is this foot of the base is going to internally rotate, which knocks my heel out and gives more space for the flyer to rotate onto. And that's crucial. So I'm going to internally rotate. Flyer's going to be able to perch a little bit on there. And then we move to our side star position from there. Directly back up to star and continue. So 2 different methods of getting through the same machine. One has a foot in the armpit. It gives us an opportunity to switch between a hand-to-hand grip and a reverse hand-to-hand grip. And then the other one that uses just a hand-to-hand grip until we get into throne, regrip the hand-to-hand grip. And Jessica and Jen, this is kind of that same thing that we played with earlier, where in the corkscrew, that grip will take you all the way through a rotation, and then you do have to regrip eventually. Any questions?
Again.
Yeah, so I'm going to show what I want to do is say that for those of us that are going to put the foot in the armpit, we want to encourage you to go play with that now and not worry too much about the parts that create that instability with the hand-to-hand grip part. And then for those of us that are going to play with that, we're just going to look at that one more time. and of course you're welcome to watch it, but really looking at how we can get a little bit of that perch coming out of the throat. We keep the hand-to-hand grip. We go between the legs with the arms here. As we re-grip, we go outside of the legs. I internally rotate the arms. And then we go to the hip. Grip. Up to the side. A little bit of that purchase. We go to the hip. From the hip we go shoulder. In front of my leg, behind yours. Top of the foot turns into the bottom of the foot. And we're there. We're going to switch gears here, but before we do, any questions on any of that from a technique or confusion standpoint? Anything?
When I'm doing the like top of the foot to roll to bottom of foot move with the hands in the other orientation, I felt like we rotated, and then it felt like the move was harder. What are your thoughts on the flyer's rotation as you're doing the foot across move?
And again, this is, I'm going to guess, and I'd have to see it to know, but I'm going to guess that this is similar to where Chris and Porkchop just were a moment ago, where if the arms end up conflicting with the legs during that transition, a rotation is likely to happen. And so as that's coming, we want the flyers to be able to bring the knees to the outside of the arms so that we end up in our throne with our arms between our legs, and that tends to take that rotation out. And again, like, I don't know if that's exactly what's going on there, or if you already have the arms in the middle and it's a different thing, but without looking at it, that's most likely what it is. But also feel free to send a video and we'll take a look at it if you film that for us. Okay, any other questions? This is one of those ones that we will revisit from time to time in this class because there are a lot of details to it, just like the corkscrew that has like all of those nuances to it. These are ones that we do revisit from time to time so that we do get to peel those layers and get more refined in our understanding of some of these things that are somewhat compulsory. We do them pretty frequently in the practice, or at least we have the techniques that are used in different parts of the practice. From there, we're going to what? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so there's two poses that we want to look at right now. One that is a reverse star. Does everyone here have a comfortable reverse star? Can I see a thumbs up if you have a comfortable reverse star? Aster, Jake, do you have a comfortable reverse star? Okay. And then Kevin, Natalia, do you have a comfortable reverse star? Okay, cool. So I wasn't going to go over too much detail in reverse star because I imagine we already have that. So let us know if you need anything for your reverse star. But we do want to look at some of the nuances for the croc. I'm going to talk a little bit about positioning of the humerus to the torso, and then you can talk about how it connects to the leg. So what we were looking for from just the perspective of the flyer in relation to their own body before it moves into the base's body is that the flyer does want to bring the elbow pretty firmly across the center of the body, moving toward the midline as much as possible. Typically, this does start to go, once you're in the position, it might start to go out from center, and so going a little bit in from center gives us some room to move, and then we don't end up right on the inside of the hip bone, which can be not so pleasant for our hip bone or our elbow. From there, once we have it deep into the midline, we want to start moving that elbow as far down our body as possible so that it moves toward the center of our body. And so I really start to really think about, can I get it to my belt line or even a little bit below my belt line? But as that happens, what ends up happening is I have a good chunk of my body that's on this side, and this side is compressed because I'm moving toward trying to get that elbow lower. And so then I want to take and extend my chest and see if I can get as much extension on the top side of the body as I have on the bottom side of the body, so that we can find balance between those two planes. Once we have that, then we're going to try to connect it to another human. And at this point, I'm doing much less. I'm mostly just a platform.
So flyers, finding the shin of the base, placing the thumb around this part of the shin, and then finding that elbow connection here. The base's foot trans out slightly so that we can then find this connection point on biceps. You're also, this other foot is available to you for steadiness and balance getting in. So I like to kind of raise my body up so that I can lift up onto the point of contact first. And then once I have that connection, draw the knees in first. And as Lux was saying, finding this extension of the lower body up to help balance. And you can always keep this hand connected to this other foot, or you can work toward extending it. Yeah, I'm squeezing my butt a whole lot there. So there is like this connection point on the front body, but the back body is super engaged to create that line.
Yeah. As a base, I want to be careful to not extend through the blade edge of my foot. I'm trying to not cut into the elbow crease. So I'm keeping my foot rather neutral. And if I want the weight to shift, I communicate verbally to the flyer what I think might be useful, but I'm not going to use my ankle to try to force my flyer to tip toward their own shoulders. And flyers, please communicate that to your bases if the bases are utilizing a technique like that, and ask for them to keep that ankle more stable. The couple of things that tend to happen here is that as flyers start to enter into that with the arm that's connected to the foot, they tend to pull it and usually back toward their own hip, and we want to avoid that completely. In fact, we want to even think that we're extending and pushing and maybe even letting that foot go away as we find balance rather than letting it push to any other angle. So really think about long on both sides. Try not to let that hand move toward your own hip, flyers. Yeah.
And also flyers, if croc is new for you and new in your practice, you can stay in that tight little ball shape and focus on just bending the knees and staying in a little koala.
Yeah. And get the top of the body extended even if the bottom is compressed. Most of us, I imagine, already have this, but we do want to make sure that people have information on what to do to get into this. Any questions?
Yeah.
Who was that?
You can tell who asked the, yeah.
Oh, yes, Jessica, yeah. Or Jen.
Yeah, I just never mounted it this way before, so could you demonstrate that one more time?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's one other thing that I do as a base here. I'm turning to this angle here. So as the flyer is setting up, I often also take my foot to the hip and help squeeze that arm into center. If the flyer doesn't want to really go midline enough, I give a little bit of encouragement with my foot there. I bend my knee to make sure that I can get underneath, and only once the weight is over that leg do I extend up through it. Jen, was that visual? Were you able to see that? Cool. All right. For those of you that aren't already in it, give it a shot in 3, 2, 1. Cool. And so you see how that still has a tendency to rotate over Mike's head a little bit? As y'all continue to play with this, avoid that. Really see if the two of you together can get this to be perpendicular in its alignment when you get into it.
She's having trouble getting her elbow into like her center line and still holding my leg.
So this is where I will take my foot on the hip. Show that one more time. This is quite common. And so I take my foot on the opposite hip, and I just help encourage that by using my legs to help squeeze that into the midline. And then Kendra, if you have like, sometimes if the biceps or if any of the chest starts to become an obstacle, we take those two and kind of move them away from each other so that we can get into the midline. So sometimes going across doesn't work. I have to really come from the side and smear into the center. See if those help.
She says my foot feels like it's going to break her arm.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't sound good at all. So let's have you extend through the inner arch of your foot as the weight is coming into your foot, right? So don't be here, be here. Extend through this side so that the blade is dropping away and not digging into the arm that might feel like it's gonna break. Is that better, Kendra? Good. It's nice. There's quite a spectrum of Crocs in this room. Room? Yes, we're calling it a room. And and so we, with varying experience levels on certain things, and it changes. On some things we're showing, there's like a group of people over here that are doing really well, and these people over here are quite new at it. And then we do something different, and that changes. So everyone's at a similar level, but with different pieces of this. And so for those of us that are feeling like, oh, I have this really well under my belt already, let us know, and we will always give you greater challenges. If you're like, what's something I can do to condition in this particular pose, we will give them to you. And so one of the things that we do in Croc quite frequently is we do leg lifts in our Crocs. And so those are always things that we can help incorporate into your practice to condition as we're training and waiting for the rest of the class to catch up with whatever it is we're doing. So let us know. We're here to support. From there, we're going to look at a couple of things. First, we're going to go into a reverse star, and we're going to go from a reverse star and start to shift the weight similarly to what we did in our reverse throne, where the flyer lifted one hip as we lifted onto one side. We're going to do the same thing in our inversion in a reverse star, and then we're going to look at making a transition from there to the Croc. And a lot of this is really in the flyer. The bases are doing some following, and we're doing some stuff to support, but the flyers are going to do a good chunk of the work here. And so we have to be very attuned to those subtle needs. So getting into reverse star however y'all want, and then starting to find that shift. We're just looking for maybe a little bit of daylight between the shoulder and the foot. I'm not taking the foot away. I am just allowing flyer to move off of that support. And it might not look it, I'm not sure if there's a visual amount of daylight that's coming between the foot and the shoulder, but it's getting lighter and lighter each time. A little more blue to engagement. Yeah. Come on, nice and tall. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And then after we have that, you want to go to Croc? All right. The flyer is going to shift to one side, and the base flyer will move that foot to the biceps, and then the flyer is going to turn in the air before they come down. Before the base does anything, the flyer rotates the torso, and then the base is going to bend the knee that's connected to the shoulder as the flyer continues to find that rotation onto the Croc, which maybe we get, maybe we didn't. That one felt like it went a little bit off to the side, which happens all the time. And so really looking as we're in the air, how much can the flyer rotate and come down square? And it's going to vary with each attempt. One more. Breathing helps only the living. So it lifts off. I'm not taking the foot away. As it gets clear, I'm going to externally rotate my foot to help that rotation, and then internally rotate it to neutral as we find our balance. So looking to make that transition. And so for some of us that we're having a difficult time getting into Croc from the ground, I'd say at least 40% are going to find it easier to go from the air. So we wanted to do this so that we can look at this entrance from both positions and see which one works better for you so that we have some method of getting into it. Right, Colby? Connecting them dots. Any questions there? Great. Give it a shot. 3, 2, 1. Rotates in the air and then tries to come down square. I'm going to help and try to bring that elbow into the midline as much as possible. And that's the exercise. Now, whether you bring both arms to one leg or have one arm extended is less important. So whatever you need to support yourself there. And then also, the legs don't have to be extended. Of course, all of this can stay in a ball even as we come into our croc. Nice work, everyone. Nice work, everyone. So each week we take different paths as we get into this class. Some weeks we really look at some washing machines because we want to just have something fun, like a little piece of candy that we chew on that's sweet and just exciting for us. And then other times we really want to focus in and hone in on some specific techniques and look at ways that we can refine our practice in broader brushes. So we do want to invite that each week as we go through this, that you take these opportunities to really look for whatever it is that we can explore in those classes. And that spectrum is something that we're trying to bring into the offering so that it's not feeling like it's the same thing every time, and we will get a broader brush of everything that we can participate with in our acro. And of course, because of the constraints of safety and our actual space, we're avoiding things that bring the flyer too high off the ground into standing work, and we're avoiding things that bring a lot of inertia, like pops and whips that are going to be things that really I don't feel safe doing in areas that we don't have appropriate safety equipment. So this feels like it's all, and even within this material, we're really looking at things that we can keep the head of the flyer in inversions over the center of the base, and anything that starts to get too complicated outside of that, until we're working in larger groups, we still are avoiding because of the constraints of the technologies and you know, of course, the environment that we're in. So with that, we want to also just invite people that if you have things that you'd like to study, reach out to us and let us know. We'd be happy to incorporate some of those things into the lesson plans that we're developing. So let us know where we'll get those skill sets into what we're playing with here. But we also want to just take and acknowledge our gratitude to you for being here and participating in class with us. It's really phenomenal, particularly as we continue to see the same people week in and week out. And when we have less new people coming in, we do have opportunities to go deeper into the practice because we've already developed some vocabulary and we have some techniques that have been established on one week. We can take those and incorporate them with less description as we move further and further into the practice. And so thank you all for being here for that and continuing to support it. For those of you that are going to be bouncing in and out, more so, you'll get a little lost here and there and you'll work with what you got. And so we just want to encourage everyone to continue participating, of course, because it really makes our experience and everyone's experience, I think, a lot richer. Take a moment, please, and thank your partners, particularly those of you that had spotters. Additionally, thank your spotter, thank your spotter, thank your spotter. But take a moment to turn to your base, turn to your flyer, thank your base, thank your flyer, thank your flyer.
You did great.
We can pick up the last one.
And throughout the week, if you're going through things that are in relation to Acro and you would like to have our eyeballs on it, let us know. We're happy to take a look and give diagnosis. And really what we're trying to do is support the practice as much as possible between classes so that when we come into class, we can get through material with greater efficiency and intelligence over longer and longer periods of time. So let us know how we can support throughout the week and make sure that the practice is growing. With that, thanks all. It was phenomenal to have y'all.
Thanks. Love you guys, man. Love you guys so much.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look at that little one.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.